Cheers.
This is the third episode.
Yeah, brought to you by the good guys. We are not in Arcadia. We are not in Publica. This time we are in the original good guys in Uptown, upstairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was actually a bar I went to way before we were even sponsored.
Is it?
Yeah, I think back in 2016 or 2017 when it first opened.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so
how did you hear about this place?
I think my friend said something like that 10 ringgit for 10
Oh,
pints. At
right,
the time there was
right.
some offer.
Right.
So I go where the beer is cheapest.
I think
ended up here.
I think the beer prices are still around the same. I think it's still about 10 ringgit per
Yeah.
beer and whatnot. Yeah. So do pay this place a visit. It's good food, good vibe. Most importantly, it's good vibe and cheap beer and good food. Yeah. Thank you, the good guys, for sponsoring our third episode.
Yeah. And the beer, much
and the
appreciated.
beer, yes.
So yeah, since it's the original TGG,
Yes.
let's talk about the original, or at least everybody's origin car, as in the first car that everyone gets, usually a Toyota.
Oh, okay. Cannot afford nowadays.
So I guess nowadays the original car is Proton or Proton.
Yeah. I think most people's first car is a Proton Myvi.
Or Axia.
Axia is you are really cutting it very tight. Most people, I think middle lower class, starts off with a Myvi which is actually a Toyota.
Yes, a Daihatsu, which derives
Which
its
is
part,
okay. Which shares its Daihatsu, which is owned by Toyota.
Yeah.
Right.
Very indirect way of starting
It's
with
a
a Toyota. So
It's still a Toyota.
It's still a Toyota, yeah. But I guess now with Proton being bought over by Geely, the market has kind of changed a lot.
I think the market will change a lot in the future to come, and I think the Chinese players is going to play a significant role. You look at Korean cars. I can tell you this: when we started Autofiles,
2016, so
4 years ago, I wouldn't touch a Korean car with a stick. At that time,
I remember the Veloster we did that year.
it was horrible, but it was genuinely horrible.
It was. There's something off about it.
Maybe we put too many people in a car so that it's slow.
You give 4 seats, you better be able to move 4 people.
But yeah, so when we started Autofiles 4 years ago, I wouldn't touch a Korean car with a stick. I would touch a Korean phone. Now, a Korean phone, a Samsung at the time was good. It was like, I think it was in 2018, towards 19, where I began to tell you, remember, I think the Korean car's not bad nowadays. I think it starts off with the Stinger also.
Yes, and for our channel, I think it was the Elantra Turbo. I
Yes.
remember it was a red car. It was late 2018.
Yes.
Volkswagen was just trying to sue me.
And I think there was a series of BMW and Mercedes Benzes that are
They
not
were
that
disappointing.
impressive.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they were okay,
Yeah.
but they were like 3 times the price of whatever we're testing,
Yeah.
which is that Elantra.
Yeah. The Tucsons, which
Yeah.
was slightly getting better.
Yeah,
And then we did the Santa Fe also in 2019.
right.
The cars just over the last couple of years, especially in Malaysia,
Right.
just suddenly got really better equipped,
Right.
better looking,
Right.
better driving.
Yes, they were competitive, and you see that therein lies the problem. They were not competitive price-wise. They were very close to the Japanese.
Yeah.
Right. But the product itself was already competitive at that time, isn't it? Yeah. So it was that time that I start thinking, hey, Korean car is okay.
Yeah.
Now, not to say that I will want to buy one, but
You could recommend
consider.
Yeah.
I would consider because the product is getting better.
Yeah.
Price-wise, maybe it's a bit cheaper than the Japanese counterpart, but I'm willing to consider. But the Chinese just came and swept that all away.
it. Yeah, I remember the first Chinese car we drove was the Vesta Maxus G10 in 2016.
It's okay lah.
It was
but
okay
things
lah.
break lah.
Yeah, in hindsight, maybe it wasn't as impressive. It was
Yeah.
just big and it was cheap,
Yeah.
and it did most things
Yeah.
okay. But later, as we sort of progressed, we got the Haval H2.
Haval, which is it's not great, but it's okay.
Yeah.
That sets the bar in the sense that we start thinking they don't suck as much as we think they would, and there are certain things they do which is pretty okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the first car I ever test drove way before Autofiles was a Cherry Maxime.
More bad.
It was so bad. I was test driving the car and I had to adjust my seat height, and the seat height springs came out. I was like, ping, ping. I was like, I couldn't
The
adjust
Maxus had a bit of that.
Yeah.
Things break as you were driving.
Yeah.
Yeah. But not the whole car itself.
Not the
It's
whole
just
car,
that some fittings were breaking.
Then when you got to the Haval H2, it was like, oh, this is
Not too bad.
Yeah, it felt almost like a Korean car.
Yeah, there are things that are not competitive about them. Like they feel a bit weightier than it should be. The engine tuning,
A bit louder than it should be.
Yeah, the gear ratio was a bit odd and whatnot. But it was okay as long as your pricing is good.
Yeah.
But that was what, 2018?
17, I think.
17.
Late 17.
Okay. From 17, then 19.
Yeah.
In a short span of 2 years, X70. Like, wow, blew the world apart. Now that brings us to 2020,
Yeah.
X50.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
It's crazy lah. The reason why we're bringing
I'll tell you why, because his boss
yeah,
is that guy, that Indian guy from PJ,
who will never touch a Proton.
who is probably a Catholic.
Yeah.
Is it? and he grew up in the 70s.
Yeah.
Cars like Ford,
Yeah.
Volkswagen,
Yeah.
Volkswagen, Ford. You know what I'm talking. Volvo.
Yes.
Not
Not him. I think
him, but
family
his,
members. Yeah.
his family members.
Yeah.
You
But
know.
Ford and Volkswagen very strong in his family.
Ah.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, lah.
But yeah, the demographic is very real.
Yeah.
The people who
It's-
will never touch
It's a
it.
Western educated Indian middle class family
Yeah.
who is slightly Western aspirational. I would say. I don't say it in a bad way. I'm just denoting a social phenomenon
Yeah.
that exists, which is slightly Western. So there is this Volvo, Volkswagen, Peugeot, but Peugeot is the older generation because
Yeah.
they're gone for quite a while.
Yeah.
That level
Yeah.
of aspiration, right? And he's the last guy I would expect to touch a Korean car. But I mean, if you're in the automotive industry, you see that therein lies real value. Because people in the automotive industry, you have your preference, of course. I have mine, you have yours, and we have our biases, of course. But if something is really good, you can't just slam it and
Yeah.
say it doesn't work. It is good.
Yeah.
It's just I don't like it, maybe. Right? So I can imagine that he may not like Korean cars, but he cannot slam them anymore because they're pretty okay, right?
Okay, yeah.
So Chinese car is you know lah.
Yeah.
No need to
Next level.
Next level.
Yeah.
And when I read an article by him the other day, I was like, whoa, even that guy was converted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the X50. It was
X50.
very recent.
So,
About
so
1
I
week.
remember he wasn't convinced with the X70. I was convinced with the X70. When I drove an X70, I'm like, the world is changed, right?
Yeah.
But X50, I haven't even driven the X50 to be honest.
Yeah. Honestly, I've sat in the X50. I haven't driven it, but I've driven both the X70. I mean, I've sat and driven in the X70. I can tell you that just based on my first impressions, the X50 is better made than the X70.
In what way?
In the construction of the car, in the materials. I know the X70 was very well constructed, but the X50 kind of takes it up a notch.
The X50, I know the interior in terms of material use was next level. It was
Not only that, no. X50 has a genuine personality. You know,
Okay.
a car that is just made to compete on price,
Yeah.
like the X70, can come across as a bit generic.
yeah.
Haval H2 is like
Haval
literally
H2 is generic.
the most generic
Yeah.
SUV in the world.
Yeah.
X70, generic, but a little bit of
A
flavor.
lot of value.
A lot of value, but
A lot
you
of
know,
value.
we don't know what the flavor is. You know, it's like
Yeah,
it looks
it's-
like an Evoque, it looks like
Yeah.
this. We don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But X50, the moment you sit inside, you know this is
There's a
style-
narrative.
Yeah, it has more narrative than the X1 we drove.
I know, but BMW has been losing the narrative to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I mean the X1 was not a comfortable product to talk
It
about.
wasn't even like a nice BMW.
It's not.
Yeah.
It
Whereas
doesn't-
this
it-
is like
it is fast, it is dynamic, but it doesn't have that BMW soul.
no. And this one, you go inside, it feels like every panel, like you saw just now. We were walking in the
I
car
know,
park.
I
we
know,
saw it.
I know.
Even the air vents had that.
I was checking. I was walking in the parking lot, checking out other people's X50. It looked like I'm about to steal it. No, the air vents look like a jet engine.
yeah, like the afterburners on like a
ah.
F15 or whatever it is.
You know that
Yeah.
there is a cohesive story. X70 lacks that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
X70 just looks like a Haval done in a different way.
Haval done right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It looks good and all that, but it's just, whatever lah.
Yeah.
It's just a generic SUV.
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
X50, you can put it up at HRV and say, okay, this kind of looks like it has more to say than the HRV.
Oh
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
that's praise there.
That
because
is-
HRV was like staple product,
Yeah.
Japanese product, Malaysia, man. And here you have a cheaper competitor.
Yeah.
You know that gives you more power, roughly the same kind of product,
Yeah.
but tells you
Same size, but
a narrative that is even more convincing,
yeah.
which
And
is really surprising.
I think it comes down to like small things. You go inside the interior, they chose to put red color here.
I know. They know.
They chose some things. It wasn't just like, hey, let's play it safe,
Yeah.
let's put black everything. The car's gonna sell anyway. It's like, no, we have to like make a
Let's
statement.
do it stand out.
Yeah. and they actually did a pretty good job. I mean, not just pretty good job. I say they did an excellent job.
To be honest, I haven't touched the car.
Yeah.
All I've touched is the door handle. You know,
Trying to break into the guy's car.
trying to steal other people's X50. But I have to say, it has that Volkswagen build quality to it.
That's solid.
Yes.
Everything is just fitting.
It's not just the use of material. You know, material is one thing. You know, like for example, BMW feels more flimsy than Mercedes because partially their suspension material is aluminium, lighter and whatnot. That's one thing. But it's also the fit and finish. You know, what is your tolerance? You know, how tight your things are screwed together, and you feel that German level, even Peugeot and Citroën doesn't have this level of.
Honestly, even the Koreans don't.
Even the Korean. Yeah. Now that being said, that's saying a lot because the Japanese. You see, we never talked about Japanese, because there was once upon a time, Japanese product was there.
Was the benchmark?
What 93, 94, 95, 96, 97 benchmark.
Yeah.
But over the years, Japanese product has kind of become.
It's almost as if they didn't really progress. They found like, okay, we've beat the industry standard,
and then they start cutting corners.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel that cutting corners?
I definitely feel it.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like from my Integra onwards, that era.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, one generation after that, they kind of peaked.
Yeah.
With that.
The mid 90s lah.
The mid 90s. That's when they really peaked.
Yeah.
Then after that, you start to see like, okay, you get the same look, but the construction
was not up to par.
Was not
And the
up there.
idea behind it was not the same as well.
Yeah.
They were not chasing their dream, as Honda would say. They're chasing money.
Yeah.
And then that chasing money leads to the 2010s, where you see the construction was a little bit.
Because now they can't ignore the design trends anymore.
Yeah.
So they start to follow the design trends,
Yeah.
but they are not following the construction trends.
Correct.
And
Correct.
the fit and finish trends.
Correct. And you know, it's saying that it feels like Korean is saying a lot because the Korean cars, if you've noticed in the past 5 years, prior to that, if you're talking about early 2000, they were screwed like.
They were bad.
They were paperclip together. You know, horrible.
In 2011, 2012,
Yeah.
Hyundai spent a huge amount of money when after the recession happened. They spent a huge amount of money investing in their factories to get their chassis up to the level of European cars.
Okay.
Because they realized otherwise they cannot sell cars anymore.
Correct.
And you don't really feel that with the Japanese cars. A lot of Japanese cars, even Mazda, you don't really feel that.
You don't.
Yeah. Whereas China, it's kind of like all their joint ventures were with German and American cars. And because of that, I feel Chinese cars, they kind of derive their philosophy from that.
Yeah, they skip the Japanese completely. The leapfrog in Chinese car it's mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling. You know, I'm old enough to remember Japanese car. You know, I remember Japanese car in the 80s. They are not that great. You know, so you have European cars which are people dream about them, like Mercedes at the time. You know, BMW was made of still, but
it was still
it was still, you know, it was still cardboard and wax.
Completely true. Like a Volkswagen Golf from the 70s, 80s is more collectible than a Civic of that era.
Yeah, correct.
A Civic of the era is some junk lah.
So you start seeing Japanese car being collectible in the late 80s, 90s.
Yeah,
the 90s one are so expensive now. You know, look at the Supra generation. My goodness,
Mad.
all of them are 100 over 200,000. Mad. But that was their peak. You know, I remember Korean cars as well. You know, I remember the first Hyundai Coupe.
Tiburon.
Yeah. No, Tiburon was late stage, bro.
Hey, same name, no?
No, it was Coupe. Then the Alien Eye Coupe.
That was Tiburon.
Then only Tiburon. Oh no.
Tiburon was an alternative name for Coupe.
Yes, but it wasn't there in the first Coupe. In fact, the first Coupe was not actually the first Coupe. There was another 80s Coupe. It's S Coupe. It's called S Coupe. It's called Scoopé. So I remember that era of Hyundai. They were
bad.
Yeah,
there was almost
lack of a better word.
No redeeming quality besides price.
Besides price and looks, some of the looks lah.
Yeah.
All right. So I remember that, and it took many years. It took 15 years before I am willing to accept Korean car. Today I look at Korean car on par with a lot of Japanese car. Of course, not the high-end Japanese car, of course, but a lot of everyday Japanese car, they're losing their shine, right?
Yeah. I mean, an Elantra of today is as good as a Corolla.
Correct.
In fact, I wouldn't know
in
which
some
one to.
aspect, they may be better. Like, for example, they're screwed better together. This is very important because Korean cars are so solid, especially in the panels and the fit and finish is so good.
And your equipment level,
it's
the
much better.
execution of the equipment.
Yes.
You know, in Toyotas, they might carry forward a few elements.
Yeah.
It feels like Hyundai are more prepared to every generation give you something new.
Yes.
Give you the latest way to do air conditioning
Yes,
or the
yes.
latest way of doing
Yes.
infotainment. Whereas Toyota tend to take very small steps with
Yeah.
facelifts and all that.
Very aging company. But the Chinese are just blowing it out the window. From cars that you wouldn't even touch with a 10-foot pole 10 years ago,
Yeah.
to cars that you reluctantly sit behind and complain the whole way, to cars that is 5 years ago,
Yeah.
to cars you are willing to buy now.
To cars that you're willing to wait 6 months.
There you go. Aspirational even.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if I'm in the market today
Yeah.
to buy a $100,000 car,
Yeah.
if I'm really just looking at new cars, X50 is in the top 3.
Yeah.
Most likely number 1.
I wouldn't buy X50 maybe because it's a bit small for me.
Right.
But X70 definitely, man. You know, for anybody in Malaysia, X70 fits all the use you need.
Yeah. X70 is too big for me.
Oh, is it?
Because I don't have anyone to carry around.
Oh, okay.
You know, X50.
You have your legs,
I have my legs, but you know, most of these B segment cars, you can make
can
do.
push back, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for my kind of demographic, I think X50 is like honestly best bang for buck.
Yeah.
If I'm really paranoid about the 7-speed DCT or whatever it is, then I would put it at number 2 lah.
You know, therein lies the problem. A lot of concern when the X70 first came out. There was a lot of concern about how it may not be reliable, but the reality is actually X70 is such an old car. In China, I mean, it's not old, but it's been running around. They sold hundreds of thousands of units, and it was tested all over China, right? So,
some people did go into like a little bit of a repair problem when parts couldn't come in during MCO.
they were cannibalizing parts.
They were cannibalizing parts.
Yeah.
But this was like a MCO driven situation.
Okay.
If not for MCO, they didn't really have that big issue.
Okay. There was some freight issues in the past few months actually.
Switch of camera because of battery issues. I guess what's really happening now is a lot of the Japanese existence in the mass market is greatly threatened by China.
We always knew this is going to happen.
Just not this fast.
Just not this fast. You know, we've been talking about it for years that, you know, like phone, when the Koreans get there, you know, they're going to push the Japanese away. And then when the Chinese get there, they're going to push the Koreans away and things like that. And we all knew this is going to happen. It's just that nobody saw it happen this fast. Who remembers Cherry QQ? Remember
this tiny A segment hatchback?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Hey, there was another car. There was Star something. It looks like a wagon.
E-Star. Cherry E-Star.
Cherry E-Star.
Yeah.
It's so pretty well, right?
And you find a lot of them in like Terengganu.
Small town.
Still, yeah.
They were pretty cars.
The car I drove, the Maxim.
Yeah.
The first car I drove, that was a successor to the E-Star. It was still bad in 2015. But do you think it's a Chinese car thing that is expanding, or do you think it's strictly Geely thing?
No, I think it's a China car. Geely may be the tip of the spear, but a lot of them are following behind. I'll give you an example. I was in China, I can't remember, but it was a while ago. We had a driver that drives us around because China is really big. Anywhere you go is really far. So we had a driver that drives us around in this obviously copycat of Mitsubishi brand. You know, instead of three, Mitsubishi means 3 diamonds.
Yeah.
Sanling, 3 diamonds. This is Wuling, 5 diamonds.
Wuling.
Wuling means 5 diamonds.
Right.
They literally took the 5 diamonds and then they arranged it in a different manner to look like a wing and whatnot. I'm not kidding you, man. So you know the quality of the founder. You know, these are people who are probably not very well educated, and they just saw what works and then they just do it.
Yeah.
But Wuling is something you keep an eye out. I mean, I don't need to butter you about the story of Geely.
Right.
Even the name, never mind. We'll come to accept it. We'll come to accept it. But Wuling is another company, for example, because when I was there, Wuling is famous for what? They're famous for this light commercial vehicle, man, complete tin cans.
Right.
Okay.
Those kind of local lorries and stuff like that.
They're not even lorries, they're just vans, for really small business. I mean, China business environment is very different from here. Over here, you have a lot of overheads and whatnot. Over there, a lot of people do small businesses. And those kind of vehicle cater to this. They're very ancient Japanese drivetrain that probably will last forever. And then they just put a shell over it and then there you go. Right. Sell cheap. That was the whole concept. And that was the concept of Wuling in my head, Until I saw a Western review of a new Wuling product. So apparently Wuling still keep to a certain extent their light commercial identity, but they have brought their game to such a different level.
Yeah.
In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Wuling is coming to Malaysia. There's a model, right?
Yeah, there's a rumor I saw that Tanchong Motor is trying to bring in Wuling, that MPV that you're talking about.
So you know this guy is not some, I don't know how to describe it, some half past six company. These people started from that kind of philosophy, but they've gone on to make really competent product. So it's not just a Geely thing. Geely is just extraordinarily the tip of the spear.
Right.
But flanking this tip of the spear, there is a whole host of Chinese company, both light commercial, heavy commercial, retail, passenger retail, and also luxurious brands. Yeah, you have luxurious brands like Hongqi. They're still doing a bit of rebranding. They're still doing a bit of reverse engineering, but their latest product, my goodness, I've just checked out online. You don't see them here, lah. Unlikely to see them for the next 10 years or so, but it is quite impressive. It is actually quite impressive. So what I think what we're seeing here is that there's a complete change of the game. The entry-level product by the Chinese is flooding the market already, even in Malaysia. Now Thailand we haven't seen this, but Philippines is.
Yes.
You know, Indonesia soon to be. You know, so we are seeing a flood of Chinese market, but not cheap goods. This is what a lot of people think. Oh, China equates cheap goods. There are a lot of cheap goods, but there are also a lot of very premium. And look at what you get for X50. For 80,000, nobody will give you that level of quality.
Turbocharged, premium materials inside.
Yeah,
you know,
built much better than most 150,000 ringgit Japanese cars that we see. You know, so what you're seeing here is that now you have a flood of cheaper Chinese vehicle that is capable of being your first car, but they are not skimming. They're not reminding you that you are paying less money.
I think it took a while for China to realize you cannot provide the cheapest of the cheap.
Yes.
Because if you race to the bottom, nobody
You
wants.
will always stay there.
The desirability is like the opposite of premium. Nobody wants you.
Yeah.
Even if someone is desperate, they will get something more reasonable.
Correct. And you start seeing this philosophy showing up in a few of these Chinese companies. Geely, you've been to Zhejiang, their factory, right? You know the founder. I mean, he has a vision of how to run his product.
Empire, not just his product.
Yeah, not just the product, his empire, his brands that he owns. I see the same philosophy even with Wuling. It's not just a man trying out there, just churning out product to make money. His product now carries his philosophy. And Wuling's philosophy, even though they are not selling to me because I'm not in the industry, but I see it even in their product. It's honest, basic, but value for money. You know, so you're seeing this product driven with philosophy. And this is not what we see with a lot of early Korean car. Even Japanese car don't have this until we're talking about 15, 20 years ago. You know?
I think mirroring what happened with the smartphone world. I think what the other companies are going to try and do is try to figure out more systems to keep you inside their brand artificially because they cannot provide a better product.
Right.
So you might get used to Honda's way of servicing, giving you their own insurance package.
So they lock you down.
They lock you down
with packages like financial packages.
You trade in a Honda, you get better resale.
Or you subscribe.
Yeah. Or you subscribe You subscribe to Renault.
Yeah.
You get an next Renault and all.
Right.
They keep you inside. You know, premium brands have been doing it for a while.
So this is good, healthy competition that we're seeing. But at the same time, we're also seeing that, you know, like Huawei being locked out from a lot of companies. This is basically dirty tactics, lah. So you're seeing both. You know, I don't see that being done with the car market. Maybe because car is not such a big market as compared to even, for example, telecommunication and phone market, where you know there's a lot of interest involved, and people are locking the Chinese companies out using political forces and whatnot. But do you foresee that happening with cars?
The dirty tactics you're talking about.
Yes.
I actually think yes. I think a lot of the reason why Geely considered paying money for Proton and not just to get Lotus was because getting a face,
foothold.
A different face for their product that doesn't say Chinese straight away immediately lowers some borders for them. You're able to sell in some countries, some markets where there's more
strong anti-Chinese sentiments.
And you know, we were speaking about this in the car. Every country has, to a certain degree, very high protectionist measures.
Especially for automotive industry.
Especially for automotive. And we've seen Proton in the past be able to penetrate countries like the UK.
Yeah.
Because we have colonial ties now.
Yeah.
We are common.
Yeah.
So I think Geely foresees this and
wants to use the soft
different
power of these brands.
Yeah. To sell more product.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, the X50 parts are still arriving from China.
Okay.
So they are assembled from a very bare stage in Malaysia.
Okay.
But the panels, the engines,
they're all done.
They're all done from China.
Yeah.
Anything that increases their volume in China is good for them.
Right.
So yeah, I still think there's going to be a lot of resistance. The whole world, every developed country is trying to make petrol cars more and more difficult to own. Owning a car in the city,
I see that.
any European country is
even a car park.
Yeah. So they're trying to force European car makers and Japanese car makers to push their way of selling cars a bit differently, to go a bit more upmarket, to consider other models of ownership.
Okay.
And it's a kind of thing where China's big advantage, which is bringing the price down of the product,
Correct.
will no longer have competitive advantage in those markets.
I see. Yeah.
I mean, it is true lah. We are facing global warming and all that.
Yeah.
But these are the reasons that they are using to change the whole.
And personally, I think the electrification, electric cars, will bring a lot of benefit for the Chinese because they electrify very early.
Yeah.
They even electrify in a very haphazard manner. In the sense that in Malaysia we see kapchais everywhere. In Vietnam you see kapchais. In Indonesia, Thailand you see kapchais everywhere. But you go to China, you don't see kapchai. Because the government banned it. If you are poor, you buy an electric bike. And so what happens is you see electric bike being charged using a normal pin charge everywhere.
It'll blow up.
Yeah, it will. It will, but what it tells you is the electrification penetrates to the very grassroots in China very early on. I see peddlers, like fruit peddlers. Their bike over here, it's that bike with a little cart at the side, yeah? Cycle and carriage, cycle and carriage, yeah? Literally cycle and carriage. In China, it's literally cycle and carriage electric battery. And all of them are electrified. I am not kidding you. Yeah. So the electrical penetration in China is almost complete. And not to mention buses, electric buses.
Yeah. Everywhere there.
The pioneers of the world is Chinese.
Yeah. So which brings us back to Toyota.
Yeah, Toyota just mentioned
their recent announcement.
Yes, yesterday, they announced solid state batteries.
Yeah. So they didn't say whether it's graphene batteries. They didn't say if it's lithium ion polymer.
Yeah.
They just said it's a solid state battery.
Yeah.
So the electrolyte is solid state.
Yeah.
Which but they didn't even show the battery.
Yeah.
They said the
next
prototype will be shown next year.
Which is very interesting because ultimately China is the high-tech manufacturing home of the world. Yeah. So whatever the Japanese are getting, they're going to come from China.
It will be made there.
Yeah, it will be made there. Or it will be, industrially designed there. And therein lies the question that wouldn't the Chinese get their hands on it first? Even if you have it.
How many hydrogen-powered Chinese cars are there? Not a lot.
Not a lot.
I think most electrified Chinese cars are battery electric.
Are battery electric, yes.
Plug-in or plug-in hybrid.
Correct.
Whereas Japanese cars, Mirai, Toyota,
they have a range of hydrogen electric
power, and
but they also have the other.
Yeah, they also have the battery electric, which is always not as competitive as the Chinese products. But they have almost exclusive use, they and Korea, towards hydrogen powered cars.
Germany had a BMW hydrogen.
Oh yeah, very early on, the 5 Series.
But I don't see.
Yeah, it didn't.
It fizzles out.
It fizzles out. But Toyota and Honda and
they're still pushing for it.
They're still pushing for it. They are literally a new wave of products with these technologies. But I still fail to see a future. For me, I think
because infrastructure ultimately.
Yeah, exactly.
It's infrastructure.
There's already power points everywhere. But this solid state battery is said to fully charge in 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Crazy, dude.
Oh yeah, I can buy a coffee, come out, it's done?
Yeah.
Wow.
If that one thing is true, right, then electric revolution.
They're talking about 500 kilo a range, 10 minutes charge. But I'm just thinking infrastructurally speaking, 10 minutes charge may not be doable at home.
Yeah,
because
it might be a DC fast charge.
Yes, it must be a dedicated. Because in 500 kilo, that's a lot of electricity that you're storing, and the ability to push so much without overheating anything, it's got to be a special pot. It's not your standard whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe it is more efficient than lithium ion in receiving electricity and storing that? I'm not sure, because we read through a couple of articles, doesn't say any details.
It's very vague, and I think Toyota itself hasn't really ironed out the details. They're probably just worried about their stock prices and said we have to announce something right now.
And keep the momentum up.
Yeah, but it's crazy lah. I mean, Toyota is still the largest car
Definitely. But you know, it's very quick for them to fall. You know, you never get too comfortable, because when you're that big, your overhead is really scary. And the moment you are a bit not careful, people will eat you up really fast. Look at Nokia. Look at Nokia, complete collapse. Don't talk about heavy industrial technologies, all Chinese already. But even retail product like cars and whatnot, you're starting to see that the way the Chinese penetrate the market is not a parallel of the way Japanese do it. The Japanese took many years. Many years. I'm not old enough to remember Japanese product as copycats. You know, there was a time when people laughed at Japanese product as copycats, like 240Z. Obviously copy of American styling and whatnot. You have your even Toyota GT, 2000 GT, all this product. But it took them 30 years?
By the time you were in it, they were already...
They were there. They were there. They were peaking, right? The Koreans got there really fast. From Veloster, which is still being sold in some places, to what we have now. It's a big change, right? And that took at most 5 years?
Since 2012.
Yeah, since 2012. So what we're seeing, the Chinese completely different model, man. They come in, give you better product, lower prices. And overnight, they change the market.
It's worrying.
The next step will be the premium market.
I suspect it will be difficult, and I think this is also why Geely is the company to look at, because look at how they handle premium. Volvo. They want to do hypercars, they get Lotus, build a Evija. They can sell it at what ridiculous
Is it out yet? No, right?
Coming out next year. Production started already.
It's electric.
It's 100%
hybrid.
electric. 100% electric. They want to do premium, they have to have Volvo in front. So, I mean, it's a pretty okay way to do things.
It's a very pragmatic way of doing things. It's like, I don't care, it's not about the face, it's about getting there. You know, and if I buy you over and it gets me there tomorrow, as opposed to me building and then having to deal with your prejudice for the next 20 years, I think Volvo's ownership under the Chinese, they were very happy. Because they were given the money which they need, but they were also given the freedom which they want to
I remember I went on a trip in 2016 with Volvo, and the CEO of Volvo Malaysia is a Swedish guy. When he went back to see these fellas, they were practically hugging, because these are guys who left when Ford took over, because they said, listen, we got no autonomy now. Ford is dictating everything.
Ford is telling you can never be Jaguar.
You must always build to this level.
You must always be above Ford, below Jaguar.
And the moment Geely came back, they called up all these old employees and said, come back, you've got freedom now.
I remember you telling me the idea of this guy behind Geely is that he says that you do what the best you can. You know, don't limit yourself to product placements and ranking and segments. You know, do what you can. You know, if it sells, it's great. It's actually, it reminds me of what Deng Xiaoping said, which is Deng Xiaoping said it doesn't matter whether a cat is black cat or a white cat. It doesn't matter whether it's pretty or not, basically. As long as it catches the rat, that's a good cat. So that pragmatism is what I see in a lot of this kind of Chinese companies. You know, this driven by money is one thing, but also this extreme pragmatism is really good, because it's not about my face. It's about getting it done, doing what needs to be done to not only survive but thrive. You know. And that level of pragmatism is what I see in a lot of this Chinese, and you start seeing that philosophy seeping into the product that they are doing.
And it's also less arrogant than what Ford and the Volkswagen Group are doing, which is hey, we know what this market wants, and we will dictate based on what we think these brands are worth.
Correct.
When you try to play the market like that, eventually you will get played more.
Correct. It's very ideologically driven. It's good in a way, but you know, it puts things into clear segment. This archivist approach.
Anyone like us can immediately decipher the whole thing and see what it is.
But reality very often is not like that. It's very messy. And I think the Chinese, because of their specific experience of having to deal with ideological system that hampers their growth, they realize that there's no point in hampering binding your feet to things that are not real.
Pretending you know how it will work out when you don't know how it will work out.
So just do your best, push it into the market at the best price that you can at a profit, and let the people decide. You know, surprisingly capitalistic. I haven't driven an X50. I really want to drive one.
Yeah, I'll get one next year.
Yeah.
Which is in a few days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't driven an X50. I don't have my hopes very high, to be honest.
When they benchmark the car, they put it up against a previous gen
I
X1.
know.
And,
I know.
According to the review my boss wrote, he put X1 owners in and Mercedes A-class owners and the previous A-class, and he said this could very well be my next car.
But the reality is, I've sat in an X1,
And it's not
not great.
Yeah. Okay. Imagine.
I have friends who owns an X1.
Right.
Yeah. Who sold it because it's not great.
Okay. We all know B segment, premium or not.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
NVH is not going to be great.
Yeah.
Torsion beam at the back is
Yeah.
not going to be great. But imagine you can get all those, the looks and the bling and the technology for freaking 80,000,
Yeah.
90,000. 103,000 is the top spec.
The top spec.
Yeah. Then even if I'm coming from an X1, like why did I spend 200,000? I can just
Twice the price,
Yeah.
man. All right, so yeah, I mean we're seeing a wave. This is not a wave. This is a tsunami.
Yeah.
A tsunami like you've never seen. Because to be honest, we've seen the Korean car. Product-wise, they're there already.
Yeah.
They just cannot flood this market because pricing. No, by the time you get there, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
But we're not seeing the same thing with the Chinese. They were totally different, and I think it's a good change.
Yeah.
But how different countries going to stop this tsunami from coming?
That's going to be the.
That's
and
going to be the question.
Let me close with one
Yeah.
question to you. Do you think any Chinese brand could have been successful in Malaysia without owning a Malaysian brand?
You know, this is a very interesting thing because
Bollywood,
we see
yeah.
the failure of Bollywood, yeah?
So much promise but failure.
Yeah, complete failure.
Yeah.
But I can see also that they didn't have the money to come in. They didn't put in that kind of money to come in. So Proton is a success, but that is an exception because it's Geely, and at the same time they uses Proton as a brand. Can this be replicated? I think that's a $1 million question with SAIC, the brand that we're talking about, Wuling, okay, that's coming into Malaysia. Can we see similar success? Ultimately, it depends on one thing. I personally think it depends on government.
Right.
Whether the government will allow you to sell a Wuling 8-seater from 80,000 ringgit.
I honestly
Yeah.
doubt it. I think the Chinese companies without local help will face a lot of government opposition.
Yeah.
And ultimately they will face the same problem as the Koreans. The brand value is not there. The value of the product is there, but customers are not willing to trade away from them. That I think-
So basically, we're in a completely saturated market where the only way you can play the game is by pushing someone else
Yeah.
out the window lah. So the question is, the moment you're talking about 80,000 ringgit coming in here, and you want to push someone out, you're pushing Proton, you know, and you're pushing Prodo. I don't think there's any way the government's going to allow this to happen. So the next step you can play would be the 120 to 180,000 ringgit game, which is the Japanese comfort zone now.
Yeah.
So I personally think if you want to bring in a Chinese brand, find a Chinese brand that is already established, Link & Co, for example, that already have products that has some fame, not complete.
It is known in the automotive world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bring them in the Japanese comfortable range. We're talking about Civic from 110 to Camry at 200,000. This range. Do it. Don't go and fight with Proton right now. You do it at this. Don't play volume seller because this brand, this volume, so-called volume, is also only a few thousand units level kind of volume.
Yeah.
So do this level. Do a C segment. Do a D segment. You know, keep your objective realistic.
Yeah.
Then you can push out Camry. You know, right now Camry is 190,000. Accord is what, 180 plus,
Yeah.
190,000. Come on.
Yeah.
Sonata is the same price, right? Kia
200
K5
K5.
is going to be the same price as well. It's nice, catfish face, right?
Yeah.
The latest Hyundai, latest Kia, I love it. But the reality is 180,000, is it?
Yeah. 200 plus. The
Forget it lah.
Yeah.
So now what you're seeing here is that you're seeing a lacuna. Sell your Camry equivalent vehicle. China actually, their cars are generally bigger than here. So what you're seeing, a lot of their car actually they do cars for C and D segment, as opposed to over here B and C segment. They are C and D segment mostly. Bring them in. Sell the Camry that ought to have been sold at 160, 155,000 ringgit. You know, do it this way, then you can. Because you know, a lot of automakers are giving up on this segment.
Yeah.
So they just go expensive. But there is still a market for it. And since you're a young player, you are not reminiscing the good old days. It hasn't come for you.
Yeah. So any number of sales is good.
It's good. It will bring the BMW guys back. Those that went for the X1,
They might go back.
trust me, there are 10 X1 owner, 8 are regretting their purchase.
2 are in denial.
2 are in denial. There you go. So bring them back to the fold. Buy maybe a Chinese car, especially in this environment.
Yeah.
You know, people are shrinking everywhere in their expenses. So he was spending 200, let him spend 140 or 130 and get
Similar.
200 ringgit, 1,000 worth of value. And I think that will be. Autofile signing out from the good guys.
Yeah.
This is in Uptown. Do visit this place. Great vibe,
Yeah.
great food, great beer.